So what are we talking about?
I think breath, the importance of breath for healing.
Should we define healing?
How do you define healing? Yeah, it's a good question. Definition of healing would be to see where in our life we're experiencing pain, I guess, in our day-to-day lives, where we're not feeling centered, where we're feeling anxious, where we're feeling depressed, where we're feeling overwhelmed, when there's overthinking going on. And then the definition of healing is how to understand and overcome that pain, I guess.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I like all of that. I feel like they make up pretty important parts of what healing, might mean for a lot of different people. And the first piece I heard you speak to was bringing awareness to the parts that are feeling painful for us. And then maybe the other side of that coin is, or that's necessary for healing, is once we're aware of those, can we stay with those? Can we stay with those painful parts? Can we stay with those fearful parts? Can we allow ourselves to remain in the face of those parts, whether it be in a conversation that's playing out and then someone says something and that brings up something in me that hurts, and it might be in a romantic relationship or in a professional relationship, but being able to be with that part that hurts as it arises and to be able to hold that and not necessarily feel like I need to get rid of that or shut it down or distract myself from that.
Yeah.
And then if we're, really talking about the art form of communication would be being in the face of that and still being able to communicate in a healthy way. And I think that in and of itself is a process and a practice.
Yeah.
And, from a very nervous system point of view, allowing those parts of pain or fear to be seen and heard so that they can be completed in the nervous system, because they may be caught in a state of fight or flight or freeze. And so allowing that cycle to complete so that we then end up with a memory of it, but maybe not so much of the charge of that specific context and situation in our life.
Yeah, I like that. So how do we do that?
How do we do?
Yeah, how do we specifically allow ourselves to be in it and allow that process to complete itself?
Yeah, the first thing that comes up is willingness.
Yeah.
If we can, in the comfort of our own room, our own home, come to terms with what is necessary as best as we can, not being in the situation, the willingness to feel pain. Yeah. If I don't even allow that willingness to come through, then when that pain comes up, I'm going for my default that has me not feel that allows me to numb that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that willingness and readiness.
Yeah.
So willingness might not be alive right now for me to see that pain. And that's also okay. I don't have to force willingness to be with that pain, because that's just probably going to cause that part to become more dysfunctional, feel more unsafe, and therefore just deepen its roots. Really meeting, we probably couldn't put there are some things to be processed here today and some things not right now. And when that willingness and readiness arrives, and readiness.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do we know when we're ready?
Yeah, that readiness is where it tends to be in its sort of most amplified form, tends to be that moment where we're like, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And whatever it's going to take to process this, and the emotion starts to come to, and I am just ready. Yeah. That's the most amplified version of readiness.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might not be so exaggerated, but just there might be a real sense of clarity, real clarity coming through. I need to attend to this.
Yeah.
and I'm seeing all of the parts that want me to not do that, and
Yeah.
I need to attend to this, and it's just incredibly clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really key one. I remember I got asked that question once in an interview, how when your clients come to you, how do they, what's happened to them to know that they're ready for it? And there's no one right answer. There's, some clients that will literally have some sort of physiological something happen to them, like a panic attack, maybe some chest pains. I'm not going as far as, heart attacks or anything like that, but something that kind of mimics the route that could be that if they don't do something now. Other people, it might be the breakdown of a relationship. For myself, because I was processing that as you were talking there, going, what was it that took me to finally see a therapist after probably 7 years of contemplating it? And what was my point of readiness in that moment was I just started a relationship. It was my first long-term ever relationship. Not that I knew that was going to be long-term, but it was like, I've got some, at the time, eating disorder, some disordered eating that's been with me for 13 years. I'm going into this relationship now. I want to be a better version of myself than this. Plus, my sister had just started therapy as well. And I was like, if she's doing it, if she's ready, I'm doing it. I've got to do this. Like, it's my competition, right? If she's doing it, I'm doing it too, kind of thing. So, I think it's a really key one of we're ready when we're ready, and there's no one defining right answer for this for us. The clarity comes as it comes in a moment. So, yeah.
And a few pieces that come up there is that, sometimes it does require the ego to drive the ego to that readiness. And it drives the ego or construct to a point of exhaustion where it's just like, I can't do this anymore. So, you see your sister and it's like, fuck that. She's not going to excel and elevate herself through this spiritual process. If she can do it, I can do it, right? Sure, let that fling you into that space, right?
Yeah.
And let's see how that works out. And the other piece that comes up, and this, this was often shared with me by a shared mentor, coach, teacher in Joseph, is that we also don't have to wait until it's the point of no return where we've got no other choice. Yeah.
Yes.
And, if we have enough capacity and spaciousness around things that are arising to be able to see them and simply attend to them without it needing to become the worst case scenario before we actually attend to them, then amazing. But sometimes it will end up being the worst case scenario before we actually attend to it, and that's where the readiness comes through.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And I think if I'm going to generalize this, what I tend to see is people that come into coaching as a generalization are usually not at the point of kind of that no return, whereas potentially more maybe going to see therapists or psychiatrics, whatever that is. That's usually the space I feel like people are more of that kind of more point of no return. Whereas, within the work, obviously, we know that we do, it takes a sort of healthy strength of ego who's potentially done maybe some sort of inquiry at least into this to know that they're ready, because the work that we do is confronting, right? And I definitely know from my experience of having therapy, it was a much gentler process. Coming into coaching was like, whoa, what are all these questions I'm being asked? I'm used to sitting in a chair talking about how I am, what's happened for me the last week or whatever. And then suddenly in this process of coaching, it's like big mirror.
It's not for the faint-hearted, and
definitely not for the faint-hearted. So what came up for me initially around, I think when I asked you the question, how do we start the process of, let's say, healing, and you'd said willingness. The word that came up for me in that same moment was breath, which is, I know, something that we want to talk about today. And for me is a huge, a huge anchor for everything and anything. And a lot of the time when I ask clients something big, they will often take a breath before they answer. So for me, that was the word that has become my go-to a lot, I guess, recently. Of I guess it's like taking that pause. How do we know how to start anything? it can usually start for people without us even realizing with a yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that feels so good. Let's do one more of those. Ah. So yeah, we call that a physiological sigh. And like you said, we even without us even noticing it, the body and the innate wisdom and intelligence of the nervous system and this body, this vessel. When you come home, let's work with something that's not maybe so traumatic. You come home from a big day's worth of work and you take a seat on the couch. What's the first thing that your body does? And it's just like, oh, that was a big day's worth of work. Yeah. And then if we escalate that a little bit and we've had a challenging conversation with someone and that's brought up a bit of charge within us, then we'll often find our system doing the same thing, looking for that charge, for that energy that's energy in motion running through the body and wanting somewhere to go.
Yeah.
All right. Which is why in FBR Breathwork, we're working with 3 levels of sound. And sometimes it's just a sigh. And the next level might be an om or an ah, not for any religious reasons. They just make different sounds and allow different parts of the body to relax. And the last one is grabbing a bolster, placing it over the top of our face, not to shut us down, but actually to allow us to release fully without holding back at all and potentially expressing that level of charge in a way that we may not have ever felt was okay to, felt it was safe to, or appropriate to, given the context and setting in our upbringing. So,
Yeah, amazing. Wow, I love that. So sound, the
yeah.
sounds.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess it's just a nuance on what you were calling the breath. It is the breath, and it's like it's the movement of breath running through us and creating an avenue for it to be able to move through us, depending on the degree of movement of the breath within us. Yeah. So if it might be a real soft, gentle, that's more than enough in the breath session. It might be just one. We're not always going for the big, right? So it really depends on what is the stimulus in front of us. And the stimulus might be a situation or a memory from the past. And if that stimulus is large in magnitude and it's causing a large charge within us, then we create the opportunity for a large, effective and safe expression of that.
And it's an interesting point you make because often been times where I've been to whether it's a breath work, whether it's some other sort of medicine, journey, whatever, whether it's a workshop, and hearing the difference in the sounds that do come out of people. And obviously there is the thing of people maybe being embarrassed to make certain sounds and all of that. But that aside, also always being aware of what I would perceive maybe the pain the levels of pain that people might be in, the more noise they make, the more suppression potentially there is versus some of the people that are genuinely not needing maybe as much of that. So it's interesting hearing that. Yeah, that's breath rather than just sound, right? It's it's the force of breath. I love that. Yeah,
And it might be a level of pain. But someone could be in the systems experiencing an incredible, let's just call it a 9 out of 10 pain as a result of having been stuck in a fight response for a lot of their life.
Yeah.
And we know that underneath, say, an anger response, it tends to be a sadness. And then underneath that tends to be grief. Yeah. Underneath, you could say, or anger. Yeah. And so that expression for that 9 out of 10 level of pain for the anger might come through with a big bolster and then end in tears.
Yeah.
But someone that might be in freeze, potentially, right? Freeze or flight, and all of a sudden stops, realizes that they don't have to, that they can move out of freeze, thaw out of freeze, or that they don't have to run anymore, might not come out as a big loud sound or expression. It might actually come into a collapse or just a complete softening and expression through tears in a big, big way, but still that person may still have been experiencing a 9 out of 10 pain. So it really depends on the stimulus once again. Like,
Yeah.
what's the stimulus that's
Yeah.
causing that pain? And
Yeah.
that'll determine whether it gets expressed in this way,
Yeah.
outward, whether it gets expressed in a way that might just allow it will look like a body that was an ice block for a very long time, and it's just thawed and just softened completely. And that's what you're seeing on the mat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I guess it's that thing of is it pain in the moment, or is it the pain that they've lived with? I guess that's
It's the pain in the moment
so
of the
that's what,
pain that they've lived with.
yeah, got you.
Yeah.
So what they're willing to
Yeah.
express
Because
in that.
in the moment,
Yeah.
if we're talking about breath work,
Yeah.
they're on a mat laying down in an environment that is hopefully safe and effective. When it's FBR, I consider it to be safe and effective.
Yeah.
And it's safe.
Yeah.
So there isn't anything to be experiencing pain about
Yeah.
in that
Other than-
physical reality,
Yeah.
other than
their
what's been
internal
experienced.
yeah. And I think so I obviously experienced one of the sessions, the beautiful sessions, and what I really noticed within that was, even though there hasn't been a lot of breath work kind of in that facilitated space, there's been a few done, but I think there was definitely the noticing that, of the difference in the experiences. So there's not just one set answer, and it's with every, with whether we're doing plant medicines, whether we're in therapy, whether we're doing coaching, there is no one right answer to people's experiences. And that's what, I really love. Every time I go to something, even if the facilitator wants to tell you that this is what it's all about, the beauty of actually hearing what everyone is ready for, right? What each individual is needing in that moment, and what they're also ready to see. And I know something that we've studied and worked with is levels of development, levels of psychological consciousness and development. And what I see in these sorts of scenarios is the stages, the levels that people are answering at. So even if there is more going on for them, they won't necessarily see all of it, and they'll be paying attention to the stuff that they're ready for at the level that they're at. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I remember when there was probably about six of us, something like that, maybe a few more, 8 of us. And it was literally every single person had something different to say about their experience. And even if there were similar, similar levels of psychological development, their story is still their individual stories, whether they're processing trauma in that, whether they're going off into, the what's beyond this, narrow version of reality that we take this to be. Whatever it is, it's just fascinating to kind of hear from others how they process and their experience. So yeah.
And so uniquely, there's, even if it's a similar type of trauma, if we talk about physical abuse, sexual abuse, you may have 3 people that have experienced that physical abuse or sexual abuse, but the energetics of that and the experience of that is absolutely going to be uniquely theirs. And it's funny, that piece around there is no one way. It's probably why I've been drawn to this technique. So I was sitting on the plane recently watching a movie. I watched the Bob Dylan movie, right? And you're probably wondering, where the hell are we going with Bob Dylan, right? And so there's a scene where Bob Dylan's 17 years old and he's just been seen playing his music, the incredible talent that he is. And then this dude says, "Hey, I'll give you a ride home." And he's talking to him in the car and he says to him, "So you like folk music, right? You play folk music?" And he's like, "Well, that depends. I love any music, and it really depends on the quality of music and so on." And the guy's like, "Yeah, but you like folk music, right?" And he was like, "No, it just depends, right?" And all of a sudden, the penny that dropped for me, I was like, Bob Dylan, Bruce Lee, and FBR are based on the same fundamental, or hold the same fundamental principles.
Okay.
Bruce Lee.
Yep.
No technique is the best technique. And that allows you to meet the moment as the moment is and not as we think it is.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as he starts to focus too much on a particular technique with his martial arts and so on, what he's seeing in front of him starts to close down, and he doesn't see all of what's in front of him. Right?
Yeah, that's that.
FBR is exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's just, well, it depends. is one of the lines that kept coming through in the practitioner training. People would ask, oh, so if we see this, do we do this? It depends. There are so many data points that we're constantly sensing and responding and moving and dancing with to follow the nervous system and be led by the nervous system. And so even though it is a technique, but rather than a technique, it's more a set of foundational principles that if we allow ourselves to be guided by those principles, it allows us to stay fundamentally open to see as much as possible and to make the best possible, most accurate response given the stimulus in front of us.
Yeah, I love that. And I think
that'll look so different for each person.
Exactly. And I think what you said there about the Bruce Lee, scenario, what I would imagine from that is exactly that, is the minute that he's trying, he's probably in his thinking mind. So the difference between this and this, in theory, because this is, again, it's just the narrowness of needing to perfect something, which involves, thinking. And what came up for me in that moment as well of that, it's like that scenario of, where did I leave my keys? And we're there and we're going back and forth to the same place. Where did I leave them? And the minute that we just stop thinking about it, stop trying to find them, usually it pops up. And I had an example of this with someone the other day where they were trying to think of, the word they were trying to think of was, funnily enough, mindfulness. But they were trying with a full mind to find the word mindfulness. And they were there and I was like, just leave it. And then they took a breath, which I loved. I would just watch them take a breath to start talking about the next thing. And mindfulness dropped in from breath, not from trying to find it. And it's just that thing of going, and as the next word came out from me, he suddenly said mindfulness. And I was like, did you see what you did there? You let it go and took a breath. And mindfulness, which is actually an empty mind. So I said to him, you see, we call it mindfulness because there's a practice of that, of filling the mind and seeing what the mind is full of, to then empty it, which is really where our potential is, right? And the best way for me, definitely, is taking a breath, right? That's how I empty my mind. The most obvious way, which I love
that, because it can be so simple. We're kind of coming back full circle, and I've just sat here and I've spoken to a whole bunch of technicalities and things to consider and pieces and so on and so on. Yeah, it is that simple, because if we can, and there might be certain things within the psyche that are making it difficult for us to be able to come to presence with ease and to access that with ease, or have the mind come to presence with ease, witness. Wait, what was I saying?
Don't think about it.
Yeah. That's right. How beautiful of a moment.
We're coming full circle too.
Coming back to the breath.
Yeah.
If you can just notice this thing that we're calling breath that's running through us, which is air running through us. You could also say it's spirit running through us or whatever else. But as soon I'm noticing the sensation of these air particles moving up through my nostrils and the bridges of my nostrils. And then it kind of feels cooler on the way in and warmer on the way out. And you start to notice those bits and pieces. Your mind can't be anywhere but here.
So true. Yeah.
What we actually are, as we know, given the inquiry work that we've done, that what we truly are isn't ever anywhere but here. Even if we jumped in a plane and traveled 1 million miles, we would still be here.
And not knowing that we're here.
But the mind,
the ultimate.
That's right. But the mind could theoretically, perceptually be elsewhere in the future or the past and so on. However, even if the mind looks to attend to breath, then all of a sudden we become here. And maybe paradoxically, the mind dissolves in that moment and it cannot possibly survive in simply here now.
Yeah.
Unless another thought arises, and then it might be thinking about what's happening in the next 2 seconds or what just happened 2 seconds ago.
Yeah, love it. And that thing of what you said there about the simplicity of it, it's like there was this defining moment for me. I can't remember which point it was that defining. Must have been breathing and not focusing on the time.
No, mind. Yeah.
But it was after years of the study. I think we met 2017, 18, whenever it was. A few years after that study, just having this moment of going, it's so fucking simple. And for me, breath. You know, all of this stuff that we've done, all of these patterns and programs that we've learned through our training, which is so invaluable. NLP for anyone that knows that one, absolutely invaluable. A lot of that. But I think the more that I did those patterns and programs, the more it became clear that any of them, and everything works differently for everyone else, but if we simply brought it back to breath every time, it's all we need. That's everything. Like it's literally like everything. And the simplicity of it is the simplicity in theory of how we came into this world as we took that first breath, as we came in. But we've made it so complicated from around however many months old as the mind comes online. The complication starts up until we may start paying attention to it into in our 20s, 30s, whatever age we're at as we start this work, 40s, 50s. And then seeing that there's, to get back to simplicity of it, there is a need to go through the complexities and to understand and to have the willingness and the readiness to explore the complexities of it in order to go full circle before we die, hopefully, or before the physical body dies, to realize the breath that we came in with. So, yeah, so simple, but not.
First thing, I didn't realize how much you loved the breath.
Love it.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea, particularly given the space that in which we had met and that we had been trained in.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about patterns, we're talking about thought patterns, because with breath work, we're often talking about patterns and repatterning, FBR being facilitated breath repatterning.
Yeah.
So these are thought patterns, and it's in, for anyone that wants to know, I've just launched a YouTube channel, and my last video was about how mind-only based therapy or coaching or mentorship has humans and leaders, entrepreneurs, be stuck, which is what you've just spoken to there. Then the next video that's coming out is how body-based only therapy has humans, leaders, and entrepreneurs stuck. Yeah, because I see this a lot.
Yeah,
it's the counter to that, where in the embodiment space, there's the mind becomes the devil.
It does.
In a lot
and it's all about the body. But
I'm not saying everywhere, but generally I have seen it,
Yeah,
and it's
we
like,
reject that.
oh no, that's too heady. It's too heady, and so all of a sudden, the best analogy that I've come across, or that came through to explain this, is imagine your body is the vessel in the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's being filled with water, right? Because there might be a hole somewhere, and this might be our conditioning. And so the thinking mind is the water that is filling the boat. Yeah. Now, if you don't attend, whilst the boat is filling, if you're doing the embodiment work and you're working on that boat, which means you're clearing the water from the vessel, right? And you're doing all of your embodiment work, maybe even the ecstatic dances and all the body-based stuff, somatic work.
Yes.
But you still have unhealthy patterns of mind, generally speaking, unhealthy patterns of mind. These unhealthy patterns of mind are still going to be filling that boat up, the vessel, with more conditioning, right? So what we want is we want to attend to the mind and patterns of mind to allow for healthy patterns to be there, so that they don't continue filling the body up, the vessel up with more water, whilst we're doing the somatic and embodiment work at the same time, and going through clearing processes or completion processes of completing stress cycles within the body. So I think, mind, body, as we know, and the integration of both, and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to the mind. It is as simple as the breath, but as you said, understanding and the cognition of it, maybe for a select few currently in this phase of the species, of our human species, they may be able to go straight into not needing to understand any of this, and they're in full enlightenment, right? And, maybe that's questionable too. There might be a handful, right?
I want to meet them. That's the ones I want to meet, because anyone that I've heard it from has done a shitload of work, right? They want to sell you the dream, but they went through a lot of years of it.
Well, I'm thinking of say the author of I Am That.
Okay.
Right? And so those people are unlikely to be in Western society engaging with the world that we're engaging in here. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually read that one.
Yeah, great
Love that
book,
one.
and just reminded me of the Indian version of Joseph. To be honest,
See, I didn't realise that the backs. I can't recall the backstory. So the
Yeah.
backstory was it just happened.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know that. Right. Okay.
it was.
I always question that.
Yeah,
I want to follow you around and see what your past
he was
really
he was a guy that was smoking loads of cigarettes and sort of your everyday person, ordinary person, working as a shoe cleaner or something like that, and then something happened. I can't remember exactly how it was, and it was a very short window of time where it had just happened.
There was also another one that it's called One-O, and he's a very I think he was English, so kind of the opposite, but similar sort of story of the claim of no work being done, but lots of trauma. And he made a pact with himself that by the age of 45, that there was a date at his 45th birthday, whenever it was, that he was going to kill himself. He was going to end his life. And this guy, he'd smoked a lot of weed. This is what I see maybe as his savior. And there was one, episode that happened, which he calls the dark night of his soul. And he woke up, and when he woke up, he was enlightened, as in there was no mind. And he says there was no prior work done to that. But the fact that he smoked a lot of weed, I think in itself was probably his work of having even a sense of the potential of the enlightened state, which can kind of help guide us to it. And that's just my meaning making around it. But whenever anyone says they haven't done anything, I'm like, I don't know. It's like, well, what might have they already had insights to, who knows? But anyway, so his ego did the ego death. He didn't need to kill his physical body, and then he became this amazing healer. But yeah, for the majority of people, as you say, there's shit to do.
and I think also at some point in the journey that continues in this inner work and so on, for me, it felt as though it was going to be quite difficult to be able to function in the world if I'm going through these processes of clearing within. But what's become obvious to me now is that it's about doing those clearing process. Now get out there in the world. Now get it stress, don't hide and try and preserve the enlightenment that one thinks that they've arrived at all of a sudden. Go to and visit your parents for a week. Go spend some time there, or whatever it might be. And let's be out there in the world and allowing that expression to come through. That is at least the case at this very specific moment in time for people in Western society. We're not going to become recluses or sort of go off onto a mountain and whatever else.
Unless that's what we choose to do, but most aren't doing that, right? We're here. So
that's right. We're here to be the mother or the father or whatever it might be, and
very cool.
Breath.
Cool.
So if we have this come full circle, it really does come down to the breath. Is what we're landing on here, and it is one of the. It sounds so obvious and it sounds so simple, yet can be challenging. And simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, so to speak. But let's not create the narrative that it's also really hard. And so the breath as a go-to, arriving at the breath, allow yourself to go through the process of probably the infinite process within this human lifetime of this inner work. Attend to mind and body, and it might feel like you're neglecting one at some point because of the amount of energy that's going into the other. And allowing an okayness for that period there of that, and until it's realized that that's been happening and there's a neglecting of that, and attend to that, and maybe neglect the other, and then come full circle and bring it all together. And all of that's the imperfection in all of that is so perfect and okay.
It's interesting. There's as I watch practitioners going through their own processes, it's what you were talking about there. It's the mind, then the mind's bad, and then it's about the body, and the way that I personally see it for a lot of people as I watch them. And we want to reject because we haven't fully healed, let's say. So now this has got to be the savior. And again, I think once we can break through that, we can start to realize that for me, what I see is the amount of time and effort that's put into the work is kind of a big part of the key to progression, rather than it just being this one or this one, or the combinations. This is lifelong work for most people, and I think the more that we do the variances, whichever it is of it, however we want to do it, that's what works for us. And again, it's not one rule for everyone, because we hear this a lot where, a lot on social media, and I hear it a lot, and there's a lot of compassion for the people that are slagging off other people's work because theirs is the best, because I can hear that's what's working for them in that moment. But then I might watch them in a process a few months later, and now they're talking something else, and they may even be slagging off the work that they were praising earlier on in the day. It's that shadow aspect, we're rejecting what we think didn't work. And then as we can break through that, we might start to see that, the whole of it, the holistic aspect of all of those pieces have helped us to grow. And there's also the part where I see certain people who struggle with the breath. It's not maybe their way of doing things, but I also say, I've got one particular client, I'm going to get him to watch this because you'll know who he is. And there's a lot of resistance to it, because there's a fear of, previously having panic attacks, and to sit with breath is quite scary for him. And so there's also a part for me where I see my process with some of the breath work that I've done is that I do preference a gentle process. And so as I work with people, I say to them, you don't have to be going, doing all of that. You can go at your own pace for it to be a calming process, rather than one that is hyping you up. Some people, I see friends, they love it. They're hyping themselves up. There's certain personality types that enjoy the and then you get the other personality types that like that more calm. So it's like, there is no one rule. It's like, go at your own pace. And, I think for anyone, once they've found their method and they've really allowed themselves to, to get the mind out of the way, they have a very calming, beautiful, experience of it. Yeah, because why would we not? It's what keeps us. We're doing it all day, every day. It's keeping us alive, and so it's
And I love that even something that might be frowned upon in the maybe mind/spiritual world, the distraction can also be infinitely wise as well for the circuitry and system that's here. Because if that distraction didn't occur, there might not be the skillful means to be able to deal with the load that's being placed on the system right now. It'll become overloaded with fear or pain or stress, and so it'll clonk out, whatever that looks like, illness or whatever else. So distraction comes in to provide it with some reprieve from that, and it's just about loosening the grip on that distraction bit by bit by bit, with a soft and gentle approach, as you're saying. And the other piece I want to say, and I want to nip this in the bud as well, because and I think it's been mentioned, or at least I've gotten on to people mentioning it, is that well, Dan, isn't FBR a technique in and of itself? And aren't you preaching that this is the one way kind of thing? So FBR, the technique of no technique, but still a technique, if we want to call it that, is the best possible technique that I have come across right now, that allows for the broadest spectrum of an approach to someone's nervous system. So the widest range within this body of work that allows people to go into big power and the most softest, tender, meeting the most softest, tender parts of themselves at the same time. So yes, it's still a technique, but for me at this point in time, in terms of similar to integral theory by Ken Wilber, is a map of reality, and it's still just a map of reality, but it's the most comprehensive map that I have come across still, if we're talking about intellectual knowledge and so on.
We're mapping what we are doing already.
Yeah.
If you want to call it a technique, it's a technique. But I like that. They're maps, aren't they? They're maps of what's already happening.
Yeah.
So, I love it.
So take a breath. Allow that physiological sigh. Should we close it out with the physiological sigh?
Yeah.
These guys can join us at the same time. So we just take a deeper breath in. How spiritual should we look? Thank you, everyone. That's very Ubud of you. We're in Canggu, so we don't do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you. Enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Good.
that's good.
Very good.